Hi to all. This video is going to be for chapter 3 lesson 4, which is about graphing functions. In the previous videos we did learn what are functions, how to identify functions, and also what are the parts of functions. We already learned that. If you do not remember, or if you have in case forgotten, you can go back to the previous videos. The links are available, so you can just click on that and watch the videos. So to get started with this lesson, we are just going to graph functions. It is one of the easiest lessons in this chapter. So let's get started. So here we have graph the function for the given domain. Now already we know domain is the value of x. The x values can be called as domain, it can be called as input, it can be called as the independent variable. There are a variety of names we could name x. So if they say given domain, that means the value of x is given. We need to find the value of y and graph it accordingly. Sometimes they give us the domain, sometimes they don't. So when they don't, we need to choose our own values for domain. So let's write, you need a table like this. This is, it's called a function table. So we write the values of x first, and then we write the values of y, right? So here they have given us -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So they have given us 5 values for the domain. So let's see what can we get from this function. The function is this one here. You need to substitute each value of x in this place and then find out what's the value of y. To start, you have to start with -1. So let me rewrite the equation. So that's y equals absolute value of x minus 1. So absolute value of x means the absolute value of -1 minus 1. Now you need to remove this absolute value line. So if you remove, you will get 1 minus 1, because when you remove, it becomes a positive number. So the value of y is going to be 0. So when x is -1, the value of y is 0. Similarly, you will do for the remaining values also. So let's do for x equals 0. So that means it's going to be y equals absolute value of 0 minus 1. So absolute value of 0 is 0, minus 1 would give you a -1. 0 minus 1 is -1. So it's -1. Let's find out for 1 when the absolute value of x is 1 minus 1. So that literally means 1 minus 1, which would give you a 0 again. Then the absolute value of 2 minus 1, that means 2 minus 1, which is going to give you a 1. So when the value of x is up 2, the value of y is 1, according to this function given. The last one is 3, so we just replace absolute value of 3 minus 1, so which means it's going to be 3 minus 1, which is going to give you a 2. Now that our table is complete, our function table is complete, we are just going to graph these points. So let's see how we can graph these points. So here x is -1, y is 0. So if x is -1, y is 0, is this point right here. Then when x is 0, y is -1. It's here. Then 1 is x is 1 and y is 0. So that point is here. Then 2 is x is 2, y is 1. So we are plotting this point here. That's going to be here. And then 3 and 2. So 3 and 2 are here. You can see that this is in the shape of a V. That's because of the absolute value function. If you have got an absolute value function, your graph is going to be in the shape of a V. That you need to remember. So let's join the graph. Let me choose another color so that it will be clear for you all how to join. Now don't make it a curved one, because curved one are for the equations with the square, the exponent of 2. So we usually don't do that. So you need to join it this way. It should be, it should be in the shape of a V. Now be precise and try your best to join it as much as possible neatly. Only then we will get the values of the graph properly. So do not forget to end your graph with two arrow signs, which shows the lines of the graph will keep continuing. This will not be the end of the graph, but the graph will keep continuing. Right, so let's go to the next question. I think it's similar. Now here they had given y equals, here they have given f of x equals, which means already we know y equals f of x. Y can be said as f of x. It can be also called as the range. It can also be called as the output. So similar like the value of x, we have different names for value of y. So for this, here again, we need a function table. Without a function table, we cannot graph. So x and y. Not that you cannot graph, but then your work will not be neat. Here, they did not give us the value of the domain. They didn't give us any value for x, so we are supposed to choose. It's always advisable you start with two negative numbers, a 0, and two positive numbers. Now you're free to take up how much of a digits you want to, how much of a values of x you want to, but to keep it short, it's better we have few of negative numbers and few positive numbers. So let's solve this. Now this is a function with a square, which means it's called a quadratic function. You will learn about these later in later grades. But for now, remember, if you've got a function with a square, that means your graph should be in the shape of a curve, which should be a curved one, whereas the one for the absolute value should be in the shape of a V. So according to the functions, the graphs also differ. So let's see what will be the value of f of x. That's the value of y when x squared minus 3. So it's going to be negative 2 square minus 3, which means we are going to solve the value of the exponents first. So negative 2 square means negative 2 multiplied by negative 2, which would give you a positive 4 minus 3, which will give you 1. In the same manner, we will complete for the rest of the digits as well. So the next one is going to be f of negative 1, right? Because we're going to do it negative 1. Negative 1 square minus 3, which means 1 minus 3, which would give us a negative 2. So f of negative 1 is negative 2. For the next one, we have 0. So the function of 0 is going to be 0 square minus 3. 0 minus 3 would give you a negative 3. This is going to be negative 3. Then again, f of 1, that's the function of 1, is going to be 1 square minus 3. So 1 minus 3 is going to give you a negative 2. If you notice, the values are getting repeated here. The value of y is getting repeated. That's because we have to, when we draw the graph, we need to have a U-shaped curve. So only if the patterns, if the numbers get repeated, you will get a U-shaped curve. After the 0, always if you have a square, the numbers gets repeated, similar to the absolute value. See, after 0, the values get repeated. So similarly here, after 0, the values are getting repeated. So again, the last one here, function of 2, that's 2 square minus 3. That's going to give you a 4 minus 3, which is going to be 1. So now that we have the points, let's start graphing. So to graph, we have negative 2 and 1. So when x is negative 2, y is negative, y is 1. So not negative 1, y is going to be 1. That's up here. Then when x is negative 1, y is negative 2. That's here. And when x is 0, y is negative 3. That point is here. Then when x is 1, y is negative 2. Again, see, as I told you, the points get repeated. So x is 2, y is 1. That's here. Next thing is what's crucial a bit, because we need to join it in a proper way, in a nice way, because that's important. Try your best to keep it as curved as possible, like that, right? So this is how your graph should look in the shape of a U. The way I already explained, V shape, this is not a V, this is a U, right? Because we write V this way. So this shape graph is for absolute values, whereas for a function which has the exponent of 2, which is called the quadratic function, that will be having a U-shaped curve. So this is how you draw the graph for this function. Did we forget anything? Yes, we did. We did forget how to put the arrow, right? So just extend this a bit in a narrow way and then just put the arrows. It's quite difficult for me to do here, but you can do it easily. So just the graph will go like that. Now do not expand the graph, because don't draw it like that, because for the next value, that's for -3, the value of y is going to be 6, because -3 square is 9, 9 minus 3 is 6. So that means your next point is going to be here, which means this line should join there. So you have to take care of that as well. Right, so let's move on to the next question. That's number 3. One of the slowest fish in the blenny is the blenny fish. Okay, I didn't know that. Did you know that? One of the slowest fish is the blenny fish. The function y equals 0.5x describes how many miles y the fish swims in x hours. Graph the function. Use the graph to estimate the number of miles the fish swims. So first, let's graph it, because they're asking us to graph it. To graph it, we definitely need a table. So let's draw the table. This is a table, right? Let's write it as x and y. This is going to be x and this is going to be y. The next one is we are going to write our own values for the value of x. Now, when you're choosing the values for such questions, you have to be a bit sensible, because we cannot choose negative numbers, because we're going to use here 1, which means it's the hours. How can hours go in negative? Can we say -1 hours, -2 hours? We cannot say so. So here we are going to choose all positive numbers, starting with 0 if you want to, and you can choose how many positive numbers you want to. So for the previous questions, we were not given any situation, whereas for this question, they have given us find out how much time does it swim. So such questions, we need to choose positive numbers wherever possible. I have chosen 4 numbers, 0 to 4. It's totally up to you how much you want to choose. You can continue the table as long as you want to and then graph it. The function for this is y is equal to 0.5x, which means the first one, that it's going to be 0.5 multiplied by 0, which is going to give you a 0.5. So when x is 0, y is going to be 0.5. I'm going to complete all in the same order, but I will just change the value of x, that's all. So 0.5 multiplied by 0.5 is going to give you a 0.5. Why did I write 0.5 here? It's a 0. Anything multiplied with a 0 is a 0. Okay, sometimes even I do make mistakes. So next is 0.5 multiplied by 2. That would give you a 1. The same way, complete for all the remaining numbers on the table. Y is equal to 0.5 multiplied by 3, which is going to give you a 1.5. So it's almost like a pattern. If you see, it's increasing 0.5 each. So the last number I have is for 4, which is 0.5 multiplied by 4 is going to give you a 2. And if you want, you can complete for 5, 6, 7, and so on. So it's going to be a difference of 0.5. So the next is going to be 2.5, and the next is going to be 3.3, then 3.5, then 4, and so on. Now that our function table is complete, let's graph it. So for graph we need, so when x is 0, y is 0, so 0 is here the origin, so our point starts from here. Next is 1, when x is 1, y is 0.5. So here we do not have 0.5, but we know 0.5 means half. So it's between 1 and 0, so that's going to be here. Then when x is 2, y is 1. So that is the perfect point here. Then when x is 3, y is 1.5. That's here between 2 and 1. 1 and 2 is 1.5. So we graph it in between. Then 4, it's 2. And you can just continue. 5 is 3.5. Then 6 will be 3. It's an increase of 0.5. So you can complete the table. Let's join these points and see what kind of graph we are going to get. Let me keep it thinner because we need to read the graph. So start from here and continue like that. So this is going to be your graph, right? Now there is one more thing they asked us to do. That is, okay, I do not know why that became red. Let me do it with black. That's not a pretty neat work, but we need to do that properly. So here again, the question did not end there. They said, use the graph to estimate the number of miles the fish swims in 3.5 hours. So we are going to find out how much distance did the fish swim in 3.5 hours using the graph. So this is the time. So 3.5 hours is in the x-axis. Where is 3.5? Between 3 and 4. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go up like that until you touch the line, and then go across, that's this way, and then find out how much distance did the fish swim. Now we cannot say it's 2.5 because it is above 2.5, which is we cannot, it's not 2.5, it's 1.5, because it's between 1 and 2 is 1.5, but this line is above 1.5, so which means it's somewhere between 2 to more than 1.5, which is 1.75. So use the graph to estimate the number of miles the fish swims in 3.5 hours. It swims how many miles? 1.75 miles in 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. This is how you use a graph to read or collect information, whichever they have asked or whichever we need. So from the point where they say that's 3.5, we go up till we join the line which we drew out right now, and then go across and check in the y-axis where does that land. That lands almost at 1.75, which says, so in 3.5 hours it swims 1.75 miles. So that's all for this lesson. It was an easy lesson. So hopefully till we meet again in another video, keep practicing.